All right, I believe we are currently streaming live, just waiting for, make sure everybody is logged in, and it's about 8:57, so we got a few minutes before we can begin. I think we're waiting for Barney. I have not heard from Terry.
Could someone resend me the cheat sheet? I'm looking for
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
it. All right, thanks. It's not a cheat sheet. It's the agenda. So anyone listening online, I'm not cheating.
Right, it's a,
I found it. Never mind.
Oh, you found it? Okay.
Yeah. Brian, I was in the lake this morning.
all right, swimming laps?
Yeah, it was kind of crowded this morning. There must have been 8 or 9 people in the water when I was in there.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty popular. There are a few who do it during the day too, the lap swimming, but certainly the morning seems to be becoming popular.
You said later in the day people are in there too?
Yeah, later in the day, there's still some people do lap swimming just in that middle cove there, because most swimmers don't go that far out, so it works out okay. But
I'll keep that in mind. I'll keep that in mind if I can get out of work.
yeah. How was the water?
It's always a little chilly getting in, but it's perfect once you start swimming.
Right. Well, traditionally, swimmers like it kind of cold anyway,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Good morning to the fish.
Yeah. I'm not Luca Brasi though.
Just watch who you piss off.
Yeah. Luca. Okay. It is 8:59, so we still have a minute. Terry, you're here? I see Terry. See what the agenda looks like.
Right.
Oh,
All right, my computer just switched up at 9 a.m. Everyone got 9 a.m.?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is everyone here?
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, then I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee of the Park District of Highland Park for Wednesday, July 15th, exactly at 9 a.m. Roxanne, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein,
Here.
Commissioner Grossberg,
Here,
President Ruttenberg,
here, please.
I do not believe Vice President Kaplan is joining us this morning. So, and this meeting was noticed, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Any public comment?
No, there was no public comment.
Okay, so considering no public comment, I'd like a motion to approve the
Wait,
meeting minutes from the
wait.
Finance Committee of July 2nd, 2020.
Okay, hold off. I just want, wait. I just want to make sure that the thing that's on the screen is notice of Finance Committee meeting, but it's not scrolling down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Good job.
I can scroll, but I'm sorry.
it's also not the date. It's today Thursday, it's Wednesday, right?
No, today is Wednesday, July 15th. It says Thursday.
Yeah.
Here.
Wow.
Grammar police again today.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Well,
entirely.
you're not after me, Terry.
Well, I don't want him after me either. No. Let me, here, I'll put our right agenda up. I'm so sorry.
Okay, at least the agenda I'm looking at does say Wednesday, July 15th. Today's Wednesday, right?
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Okay, so let's keep moving along. Since there's no public comment, we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is the approve the finance committee meeting minutes from July 2nd, 2020. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
A motion by President Ruttenberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Grossberg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and the meetings have been approved. Next item on the agenda is the updated financial forecast. Director Peters to present, and I'm going to mute.
Okay.
We're just getting the information here on the screen.
Now, is that on your right
Nope.
screen?
You have to slide down here. Yeah, event notice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay,
All
we're
right,
ready.
sorry about that. All right. So good morning, and the first thing on our agenda is our updated financial forecast, and this will look somewhat familiar to everyone. We try to follow the same format that we did previously, but just add in numbers for June as well as respond to a few of the questions and suggestions that we received at the last meeting and then between that meeting and this meeting. So since we are streaming live, we want to have our special disclaimer up here again that while we have tried our hardest to project things the best that we can, we are in definitely unprecedented times with the COVID pandemic, and so things, may just change a lot tomorrow. We could go back to phase 3, we could go to phase 5, you just don't know. So moving right along, we have our chart of operations, our general and recreation funds, which we have looked at previously. It's been updated for June. If you recall, the solid lines, the green, it was our budgeted revenue, the red was our budgeted expense, which would show a net income at the end of the year of $3 million. We then, at the end of May, made projections because of COVID. And again, now the green with the dots on it are our revenues, and the red with dots are expenses. And this showed that our net income would drop to under $2 million, which would give us a net difference between our original budget and our new projected numbers of a reduction of net income of about $1.2 million. And if you remember, these were worst case scenarios that we used in our projections. So now when you go over and you look at the dotted lines, the dotted green is what our actual revenue is through June, and you can see that it is charting above our projections. And then you can also see that the red dashed line are our expenses, and they're coming in slightly below what we had projected for expenses. So our revenues are coming in better, our expenses are coming in lower. That's what we would like to see. And as a result of that, then our year-to-date net difference between actual and what was projected is at $2 million. So do we have any questions on this chart?
Questions or comments from the board members?
No, very clear. Thank you.
Good, good. And
President
we're
Ruttenberg?
happy with the results it shows too.
President Ruttenberg?
Oh, let's keep going.
Okay, yeah, I think this is a great illustration, and it's easy for us to understand, so thank you very much.
Okay, good. All right. Now we're going to talk about the recreation fund. We had been asked to kind of break things out just for recreation. So before we get there, we're going to just go over a few things that are happening in recreation right now. The golf course and driving range are meeting budget, and the tennis and golf are both exceeding our net revenue projections. Outdoor athletics and in-person programming are exceeding our net revenue projections. Tennis and golf camps are expected to meet projected and budgeted revenues. Unfortunately, recreation camp is not expected to meet the projected net revenues. Park ambassador expenses are expected to exceed our projections. Non-resident lakefront revenue is expected to exceed projections. Our expenses are going to be coming in below projections due to our reduced payroll and because we didn't perform dredging over at Park Avenue. And the recreation center net revenues are not expected to meet projections. Does anyone have any questions just on these few comments we have here before we look at our graph of the recreation fund?
I'm sorry, are we going to analyze in this call the rec center revenue versus expenses?
Oh, on the very next slide, we are. Are you ready to go there?
He wants rec center.
Oh, rec center. Oh, I'm sorry.
So no, we were not going to do that during this meeting today. Since we only have numbers through June, we're just going to analyze recreation in its totality. And then at the next meeting, we can dive a little bit more into that specific center, but certainly would entertain questions in regards to it if you have any.
Yes, I know, and that's what I wanted us to know for this meeting, that when we have such, I want to know approximately what it is costing us to operate the recreation center on a daily basis when we, and what we're getting when we have 30 people who are participating.
Okay.
You want to know that right now?
I want to know a ballpark number of the loss we're incurring by having the recreation center open right now.
Sure. I think we can provide you what we don't have detailed numbers. Obviously, it's only been open for 2 weeks now. But Mitch, I think, has information on the revenue that we've been receiving and can speak to the staffing costs that are associated with having it open, which would be above and beyond just the operational costs that just occur because the building is operational. So Mitch, I don't know if you.
Well, let me jump in. I'd rather that we defer that for a little while Mitch gets the operational cost in total, approximately. I want to know what it costs to turn the lights on and open the key in the morning versus what we're collecting for this 2-week period. It doesn't have to be.
Here's my suggestion. I mean, we have a lot on our agenda tonight. This morning. We don't have that information available at this time. I'd rather have Mitch focusing on the call than fishing out information. Why don't you just make a note of that and get Barney that information? So, I'm sure that's readily available, but let's focus on the items that we have on our agenda today.
Okay,
I
will
agree.
do.
Okay. Commissioner Grossberg?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Now, the only thing is I noticed that the recreation camp is not expected to meet projected net revenues. Can you explain what the reasons are for that?
Yeah, I can give a brief overview of that, but as you know, we revised Camp Hometown from what the original camp for summer was intended to be, and we anticipated there were about 150 spots available that we could accommodate for the public, and we only had 40 people register for that Camp Hometown, and we did, as a result, offer many mini camps, which the Camp Hometown was a 6-week commitment all day for essential families who have essential workers, and there just wasn't, I guess, a high enough demand for people who needed that type of service that we provided this year.
Okay.
So, but as I said,
So
yeah.
in the short, in a summary, not enough people signed up for it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So in these weekly camps, though, you don't mention that here. Are those meeting or exceeding expectations?
So the tennis and golf camps are expected, as we say there, to meet the projected and the budget.
Are you doing other weekly camps besides tennis and golf?
Yeah, then there's the athletics. So that's kind of what we met. So we're doing mini camps at Heller. We're doing mini camps at Rosewood Beach. We're doing mini camps for athletics.
Okay, that's fine. So my suggestion is that this is presented to the board, that you break out the weekly camps and indicate whether they're meeting or not meeting expectations.
Okay, yeah, I will do that.
Okay.
We will do that. It is a lump sum. We didn't anticipate each camp by camp, but we can provide the numbers and the overall expectation based on projections and let you
Yeah,
know where
again,
we're
I
at.
mean, you have a line item for each of these things, and you didn't mention the weekly camps because that's really broken out. That's really novel for this year because of what we're dealing with. So I just, I think it should be for transparency purposes that should be noted that there are other camps that are being successful, not only besides tennis and golf, but there are these weekly camps also.
Sure, okay.
Okay. All right. Next, any of the other questions or comments? Let's move on. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so this graph we tried to make look like the operating fund chart, but this is just recreation. As requested, we also took out taxes, and there are no transfers shown here. So like the previous chart, our solid red line and green lines are revenues and expenses. In this case, our red line expenses is greater than our green line of revenues in the original budget. So we originally budgeted about $10.5 million of revenue for the year in the rec fund, with expenses of about $13 million for a net loss of roughly $2.4 million. When we went back in May and did projections, which are the lines with dots on them, we are showing that we are projecting expenses to come in at just under $9 million for the year, and then revenues at just over $5 million with a net loss difference of about $3.7 million. So as you can see, our projected net difference between the two scenarios, the budget versus projected, it's going to cost us an extra $1.3 million. However,
let's go back, okay? Do you want any questions or comments on this yet, or do you want?
Oh yeah,
She was just gonna talk about year-to-date.
Right, I was going to go over year-to-date.
Okay, fine. That's fine.
So you can see the dotted lines are our actual, starting in May when we're trying, we're posting against our projections. So you can see that our actual is coming in a little bit above our projections. Again, we did project a worst case scenario. And we can see that the red dashed line are our actual expenses, which are falling just below what our projected expenses were. So if you look up on top at June 30th, our year-to-date net difference between our actual and projected is about a $5 million plus. So, or I'm sorry, $500,000 plus, going in the right direction.
So in some we're doing better than we projected.
Right. Overall, we are in recreation. We are doing better than what we had projected at the end of June.
Great. Okay, questions, comments, Commissioner Ruttenberg?
No.
President Ruttenberg?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Grossberg?
I'm following.
Okay, cool. All right, let's keep moving.
Okay. All right, next up, we had been asked to project out what would happen if COVID came back. So these are the assumptions that we used in case we do regress in the Restore Illinois phases, or if in fact we come back with a stay-at-home order this fall. And these are our worst case scenario assumptions that we used. We assumed that we would be fully closed starting the week of Thanksgiving, and that would continue through January 2nd. We also assumed that there would be no revenue during this time frame except for taxes. We used June expenses for the expenses for the month of December and for in the equation for the time that we would be closed in November. We chose to use June expenses because, in fact, June has the least expenses of our 6 months for the year so far, except for January, which was due to accruals and timing differences. June really gives us a very good look at our expenses with all of our closures, because as you know, things kind of trickle in, a month or so in arrears once we had closed, once we had implemented our furloughs and cut a lot of our operating expenses. So we feel that that would be the right expense number to use out in December and for the end of November. We also assume that there would be refunds for fall session 2 programming. And at the same time, staff is preparing turnkey solutions for any missed days there would be, or if we go to phase 3, or if we have a stay-at-home order. And then finally, we did not assume any transfers. Do we have any questions on the assumptions before we look at the chart?
Questions, comments? Okay, let's go.
Okay, so in keeping with our previous charts, we try to have this one be the same. Same budgeted numbers. This is for our operating funds, general and recreation funds, so still at the same levels of revenue and expense. Our projections stay the same too until we get to the November, December timeline, because that's when we are saying we would project COVID to come back and hurt us. As you can see, we said that we wouldn't expect any revenues except for taxes, which are generally pretty minimal, that come in that late during the year. And then we also are showing expenses being more level than the trajectory of the original budgeted expense line item. And so what we would project if the COVID returns is, going down to $1.5 million of income for the year, and that's shown down here. And then if you took this versus our projections back on the front side, the difference between the original budget and the projected was 1.2 million. So in essence, we're saying that if we go back and have another COVID outbreak that causes us to really cease operations, it would cost us another $300,000.
But that does not take in the assumption of the additional revenue that you're showing in the dotted line?
On the dashed line?
Yeah.
Right. That's true. Yes. It's
So
just on our.
if we exceed the revenue projections until, let's say, there is another shutdown, that's not reflected in that $1.2 million. So that number could be less.
The expense could be less, you mean?
No, the
Or you-
budget versus the projected, the net difference could be less because we're exceeding expectation or exceeding what you're projecting for revenues based on the dashed line.
Right. Because right now we're doing better than what we projected. Again, we tried to use worst case scenario, so I would expect our outcome to be better. But right, if something else happens, that could change things up. But for right now, we are looking good versus our projections.
Okay.
And I think what we're trying to say is even if we close down for those last 5 or 6 weeks of the year, while it wouldn't be good, it shouldn't kill us, hopefully.
Okay. Questions, comments? Commissioner Grossberg.
Well, no, I mean, I understand it, I follow it, and much kind of the converse of what Commissioner Bernstein was mentioning regarding the dashed green line, perhaps as we may have to start thinking about lowering our expenses as well, heading into a potential situation like that. I noticed you were using the June. You mentioned something about that. You were using June. What was the exact sentence on that? For these assumptions?
Right. So, well, unfortunately, we don't really show individual month to month, but we use expenses from June, the amount of expenses in June, because if I look at each month individually, the first 6 months of the year, the month with the least amount of expenses in it is June, excluding January, and that's due to timing differences and other things. But June is where all of our budget cuts really caught up with us and started reflecting in our financial statements because we do things on a cash basis during the year. So, the significantly reduced utility bills for the time we were closed didn't really start getting paid until June. A lot of the staffing, as far as June was concerned, of course, we have hiring freezes, we have stopped giving raises, people were on furlough. Many people were starting to take unpaid days off because they were being required to furlough. So that all really has come to a head in June. You really see that best in June. And so the expectation would be if we completely close down again in November, because at the end of the year we have a very hard close and we accrue everything back, I would anticipate that the expenses in December would mirror what we've got going on in June because, people's vacation banks would not be reinstated yet at that point. So there'd be more days of, unpaid time off and the expenses would go down again because we would be closed, so our operating expenses would drop.
So my question, I guess, would be then, how concerning is that $300,000? How do we absorb it? How do we lessen the blow of it? Or do we just accept that that is what it's going to be?
Well, so if you see here, we said we would budget no revenue during that time frame, but it's in the same slide, we also said that we are working on turnkey solutions. So we would very much hope that if we did have to close down again, that we could very quickly go back to some of our video and remote programming. And so saying that we would have zero revenue except for taxes would be a false statement, because again, we're trying to show worst case scenario. But I think we are, very much trying to make sure we have things in our back pocket. And, when we've been through this now once, so I think we have things ready to go and are working to have more things in place that we would have programming to offer, even if we did have to completely shut down again.
Okay.
President Ruttenberg?
My question is following along Terry's question line. Are there no expense items that we can implement for starting now and then for those 2 months that would lower the angle of the expense line? Because that's going off at about a 45-degree angle. So my question is, aren't there expenses that can be implemented that would bring that to, as they say, flatten the curve?
Right. Well, we still have our hiring freeze in place, and we have the no raises in place. We still have many people out on furlough. And, I think we have tried to reduce a lot of our operating expenses. I think we're thinking smarter. We've reduced people's spending limits without managers and department heads signing off on them, just to make sure we've got extra eyes looking at every expense that we have to make sure, is it absolutely certain? Other than that, off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I guess we are questioning programs that we offer, and as we start our budgeting for next year, we review everything that we offer to the public and which things we should continue to offer or not offer. And I guess that could play a part if we were to decide that, something this year wasn't really making the grade.
No, I can appreciate what you're saying. And I'm looking and I see that we have a $5 million difference between the projected expense with the reductions and what our expenses normally would be. And that's reflecting obviously the staff cuts and programming cuts, but it is one of those situations where should we look at making copies of everything on two sides of the paper, cutting down it. And I'm just using that as an example. You're probably already doing it, but.
And we do already do that, actually. That is the audit, that's the default setting on all of our computers, so.
No, but I'm using that as an example because we're all constantly reading where big companies are, not giving away free coffee. They're doing every single thing that's possible to reduce. And I think we have to assure ourselves that we are doing every single thing that's possible to reduce expenses. And that's, and I'm sure you are, but I guess we should take, as you continue to do, we need the assurance that you're taking real hard looks at every single thing. And hey, turn the lights down, put in smaller light bulbs. I don't know. I'm just saying along Terry's line. I'm just following up on that. I think we just really, really need to be able to say to the public, here's a list of 218 things that we've done to hold down our expenses.
Right, understood. And even some very simple things such as garbage pickup. We have, we cut back on that while we were closed, and I do not think we've accelerated that. We have really pulled back. We had a lot of agreements with Comcast. Those have been suspended or canceled at a lot of the facilities. Even things as simple as magazine subscriptions, because obviously we can't have magazines, and we had cut those way back, but continue to do so. So I know at my desk, everything crosses it. We are trying to scrutinize everything that comes across.
All right, that's exactly what we just need to keep the eye on, and hopefully we won't get to this point, but we'll see.
Anything else, Barney?
No, thank you.
I would just add that even under, as far as I've been on the board, with Brian's predecessor, with Liza, and with the current administration, I think it's been very impressive, the efforts that have been made to limit expenses and maximize revenue. So I think this is an ongoing endeavor by the staff, regardless, even before the COVID crisis hit us, that they've always been very diligent in trying to limit expenses while maximizing revenues. And this is, and obviously they're taking this to another degree, so to speak, since the COVID crisis hit. So I have confidence that our staff will do everything possible to limit the amount of expenses and maximize the amount of revenue. I think that just looking at this, I think if I can conclude, it appears that even under the worst case scenario, that the Park District will be able to absorb the projected losses within the current, I guess, within our current financial condition. Is that an accurate description? I mean, are we going to be okay even under this worst case scenario?
Yeah. Yes, we're still actually showing a positive bottom line. And then we're going to look at cash flow in another slide or two, and we still look fine there as, in regard to our 25% reserve. So I do think we are okay.
So basically, there's a net positive here that even under that's the reason we ask you to do this exercise, is to see even on the worst case scenario that the Park District should be able to survive it and still have the ability, as we turn the corner on this crisis, to thrive in the future. Is that correct?
Agreed. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. Anything else from the board members? Anything from staff on this? Okay. Hearing nothing. Are we still we're still doing the financials, correct?
We are.
Okay.
Ready for your next slide?
Next slide.
All right. Next slide is payroll. All right. If you recall, our original budget for payroll for the year was about $10 million. And then we went through and we did projections, the blue line, and we lowered that to about $7.5 million, again, based on furloughing, hiring freezes, wage freezes. And then we have dropped in yellow what our actual payroll is. And that, again, is trending below our projected. Again, we tried to use worst case scenarios in our projections. And so payroll too is trending favorably. And we had shown some differences. Our budget versus projected was a $2.5 million savings. And now we're showing our actual versus projected about a $250,000 savings versus what our new projection had been.
And that's about $1.2 million below what the budgeted payroll. No, wait, yes. Budgeted payroll is the green line and showing at 4.5.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
And we are at 3.3.
Yeah.
Questions, comments?
Well, I just want to say that, this is what we were looking for. At least this is what I was looking for, to keep our operations running, to have smart people thinking about all the contingencies that could happen during these weird times, yet cutting our payroll, it's short-term gain, but we were able to kind of walk the line a little bit here, straddle it between being responsive to the taxpayers and things like that. So I really like the way the plan has worked out. I hope it continues this trend. Obviously, we want to see it up by the green at some point when we're all back to normal, but this looks really, really good to me.
President Runberg?
Right.
I agree with Terry.
Okay, so do I. Next slide. Is there another slide?
Yes, there is.
There's always another slide. Okay.
I know, it's kind of never ending. If you want to give me directive to make this shorter next time, we can.
No. This is the purpose of the finance committee, is so we can delve into this in detail. So I'm very happy with this.
Okay. All right. Well, Now we have our cash flow projections, and I have really streamlined this. It used to be well over 120 rows, but really, I think you were used to what goes into this. So really, the big thing we just want to focus on now and going forward is our reserve. Are we going to be okay with our policy directive of having a 25% reserve of our budget? And again, that's about $4.6 million. So that, of course, stays stagnant through the year. Presently, our projected cash on hand at year end is really close to what the original budget had showed for our cash on hand at year end. So we are looking good. You had previously asked on a different slide, how are we looking at cash? We are fine. We are definitely fine.
Is that mostly because of the steady tax revenue?
Well, yes, yeah, we would not be in good shape without our tax revenue, absolutely. And then, also, we have eliminated some things that cost us things. Having the Aqua Creek open, that is a loss for us for a season. So obviously, that's been removed. And, some of the other programming that we do, anything from, the Breakfast with the Bunny and now, Forest Fest and Polar Express, things like that, those are all generally, those all operated a loss. Those have all been removed from our budget. Again, the staffing reductions, the hiring freeze, the wage freeze, those all are, those all affect our cash flows.
Okay.
President Rundberg?
Continue.
And this is strictly from operation. This does not, the reduction in the capital projects expense, that's not reflected in these numbers, is that correct?
Correct. Yes, that's its own, separate analysis.
So in sum, based on operations, if based on your projections, is that basically we should be in the same, very similar cash position at the end of the year as we are in July? Is that, or is that July? Yeah, July.
Yeah, pretty much flat. Yes.
Okay. And why is there more cash in October and November versus December? Is that because of receipts from real estate taxes?
That's right. We have little to no tax receipts in December generally. And also in December, we do have to pay debt certificates. And so we always generally have to take some money from operations to help pay down those debt certificates. So that's also reflected in the December numbers because that does affect our cash flow. We do have to make a transfer for that.
So so September, October, November, the increase because it goes from 11.6 to over $14 million. That's reflective both on additional revenue from programming and tax revenue. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Next slide.
Okay. All right. We have had some questions regarding our COVID-related expenses, so we just wanted to spend a couple minutes on those here. First off, we have been tracking since March the expenses that we have incurred for supplies due to COVID-19. We're doing that because we hope to ultimately receive public assistance via Lake County and IEMA from FEMA. And so we have to have very good tracking of those expenses. And we are also going to use those numbers for the park districts in Lake County are consolidating together. And we have asked for a portion of the Lake County CARES Act money that has been received, which is about $122 million. And I know we've been putting that in the Brian's Friday memo to keep you updated. So we are hoping to have these expenses reimbursed either from the CARES Act money from Lake County or via FEMA at a 75% reimbursement through public assistance. So in our projections, we are expecting to have $33,000 of expenses, of supplies expenses through the end of the year. And at the end of June, we have incurred $18,000 of such expenses that we are tracking. As far as staffing, our lakefront staff at Rosewood and Park Avenue, we had budgeted $32,000 for staffing for Memorial Day through Labor Day. Then when we updated our projections at the end of May, we did increase that number to $55,000. And now, as of today, July 5th, we are estimating that the staff there is going to cost us roughly $80,000. Now, on the other side of that,
That's because we keep adding security.
we do, yes,
Yeah.
yes, we
Okay.
do. But if you look at the other side, the flip side of this, police services, we have budgeted $130,000 this year to pay the city for police services. And we had paid about $40,000 before we decided to not be in that contract anymore. And so that's going to give us a savings of roughly $91,000, which means really our savings from police services are going to more than offset our staffing costs for the lakefront.
Questions, comments? Commissioner Renberg? President Renberg?
Nope, nope.
Terry?
Nope.
Okay. Next slide.
Okay, that is the end unless you have any more questions.
Okay, so that's the end of your presentation regarding the financial forecast.
Yes.
Okay, Brian, how often are we going to get these updated?
Every month at our first finance committee meeting of the month.
And when is our
I'm
next?
sorry, the second.
At the second. So the routine going forward during this crisis is that we're gonna have two finance committees or one or two finance committee meetings a month, but it's the one in the middle to the later part of the month, middle to the latter points of the month is that we're going to get these financials updated.
That's correct. So that gives us a week or so to close the books and get everything in order so we can present to finance committee before presenting to the park board. Yes.
Okay, I think this is a very fruitful effort, endeavor, and I think we should continue doing this. Are you going to update the board at the next board meeting? Well, basically what we heard tonight.
Exactly. Yes.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, well, I want to add one thing for the tables, the charts, and the update. I think it would be very helpful if we had something I'll just call the total effect of COVID-19. And I'm not quite sure the format to present it, but I think it's got to be a basic, here are the numbers as opposed to a lot of dialogue. We've lost revenue, we've incurred expenses that are, and yet we've tried to save money. But I think what we need to do is bring it all together so there's a constant rolling picture of the total effect on our operations and our expenses and our revenue based upon what COVID has brought to us.
Okay.
And I don't know how the rest of the board members feel, but I'm one of those guys who always likes to read the last chapter of a book while I'm reading the book because I can't wait to see what happens. So when you're making your presentation to the board, if you can basically outline what your conclusion is at the beginning of the presentation, like saying that we're in a good financial situation, or even under the worst case scenario that we should still be fine, and then support that conclusion with the numbers. I think that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Yes, and adding, as I think you've seen, the line graphs are an incredibly effective way to present the information to us and I think to the public.
Okay. Well, very good. We'll continue to have those.
And let me also add that I spoke to Brian Romes yesterday before our meeting, and I think because so many things flow out of the financials, like when we evaluate a contract for Sunset Woods as we go down the road, that we're going to move the financial report to the beginning of the board meeting.
Okay.
That way everybody has an idea of what our status is, our condition, because as you saw yesterday, we were constantly asking, well, how does this affect us? Can we afford this? So that will be one of the first presentations now.
Okay. No, yeah, that makes sense because, right, if something for some reason starts to go wrong, yeah, you'd want to know that before you're making all the rest of the decisions that evening, definitely.
Okay, anything else on the financial forecast?
No, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff now.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is capital budget reviews for tiers 3 through 5. Director Smith to present.
All right, thank you very much. So can everyone see the spreadsheet on your screen?
Yes, I got it.
Yep.
So this is basically a continuation of our presentation we did at the previous Finance Committee meeting, and also the abbreviated version we did last night at the workshop board meeting. And that is, what you're looking at here are these tier 3 to 5 items, whereas we looked at the lower tiers on the previous meeting. Now, tier 3 to 5, tier 3, just as a reminder, are the scheduled replacements. Tier 4 are improvements to existing items that kind of it would be nice to have. And then tier 5 are new items, additions that we currently don't have.
And there's only one tier 5 on this chart.
Yes, that's correct. There's very few tier 5s.
Okay.
So, and once again, this is the same as the spreadsheet we looked at before. This is showing column C, our approved budget for 2020, column D, what was discussed and decided at the March 27th Finance Committee, and then column E, which we're calling here recommendations, and then column F is the working draft budget. And I will say, particularly here for column F, this is very much the working draft budget. We are currently in the capital planning process, and so these numbers certainly will change. You're going to see items listed in here that are, as you said, a tier 5 or a tier 4 item. And I can't say at this point whether staff would be recommending those when we bring the capital budget to the board for next year. This is simply how it stands right now. We're going to be looking much closer at those. So with that said, I will say that this spreadsheet, in contrast to the one we looked at last night with the tier 1 and 2, that one was talking about the projects we felt needed to move forward with in 2020. For the most part, these are projects that we will not be moving forward with. And so I kind of want to highlight that idea. I will say, though, that you'll notice there are dollars shown for some of these projects. So as was pointed out last night at our meeting, this spreadsheet does not clarify which of these items have already been spent and which of these items we're recommending to move forward at this point. So I'll say for these items, they're primarily, or they are things that basically have been spent. So the items of tier 3 or 4 that we're saying we'd like to essentially do this year are ones that either had occurred prior to the pandemic, or they were items that we discussed and determined to move forward. And the example I'll give would be the HVAC. We did a bid, we had 4 sites, 2 of them were critical, 2 of them were tier 3. We decided to do all 4, obviously because of the economy of scale, we get good pricing. So with that said, I would like to very briefly go through this list, unless there's any questions before I get started.
Please go.
I'm going. Here we go. I'm going to move pretty quickly here. There's really only one area I want to point out. So I'm just going to ask right now, and what you can see here, these first few sections, are there any questions?
Nope.
Great.
Barry? Barney?
No.
Okay, let's go.
We're going. All right, here we go. This is the one I want to talk about, is Moraine Park.
Yeah.
All right, so the second item on here, line 12, is the ravine restoration. So this is the joint ravine 10 project with the City of Highland Park, the Army Corps, and the Park District, which I know that the board is very familiar with. You'll notice that we've assigned it a tier 4, which is an improved existing item. And you'll also notice that we are not in column E here, where we have it at $0, and also in 2021. So we have been in touch with the Army Corps to determine whether or not they still have the funding for this, if this is moving forward. And we haven't really got a lot of clarity from them yet. So we have reached out to the city, city staff with Park District staff to discuss this and talk about how this project lines up in priorities within each of our capital plans. And the city, I'll say, feels very similar to the Park District, and that we both feel that this project would be beneficial to both agencies, but considering the current circumstances, it's not the highest priority and not a project that we could recommend moving forward with this year as originally planned. So with the Finance Committee and likely the board's consent, staff would recommend that we reach out to the Army Corps and let them know, in conjunction with the city, and both agencies would let the Army Corps know that we'd like to defer this project. We are proposing to defer it for 2 years. And at that point, we could reassess our financial situation to determine whether it is a priority and something that we could realistically move forward with.
Makes sense.
The only,
Yeah.
the only question I have is, again, I just keep thinking about it from a safety standpoint. People are using it anyways, right?
So, yes, thank you for pointing that out. Let me clarify. This is the ravine restoration, where the Army Corps would come in and they would restore the ravine habitat. So the benefit for the Park District would be environmental, would be natural areas improvements in this area. And the city has essentially utility lines that run along the bottom of the ravine that are exposed, and those need to be dealt with. That's the purpose of this project. The path is separate. We talked about it briefly last night, and the staff are now going to come to the board soon to talk about that and possibly moving to that next stage. We did talk about this could be somewhat funded through this, but that's not the goal of this project.
And
Okay.
that includes the path includes the stairs.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah, you'll see. Exactly. We have that there. We figured, it's something that we feel they're getting close to needing to be replaced, and it would only make sense to do them at the same time we're doing the path.
I just can't imagine 2 more years without safe access down there, but
Once again, I want to clarify that what staff are recommending for deferring the ravine restoration doesn't have anything to do with the decisions that the board may make regarding the path. This is just the Army Corps coming in and restoring the ravine.
okay, but when you say restoring, when you say restoring the ravine, I understand you're talking about the natural elements of it. But am I wrong to be thinking that that also includes proper support to allow for safe pathway and stairs? Because it's the failure of the ravine that is causing the problems with the path, right?
So and I know the board has not seen these concepts yet, but we've been working with an engineer to develop a concept for how to resolve and rebuild the path. That plan addresses what you're referring to as far as stabilization.
Okay, well, I'd love to see that as soon as you can.
If there are no other questions, I'm going to scroll the screen down here. And I'm just going to kind of go through this once again really quickly. There aren't any other particular projects I was going to point out.
Westridge and Centennial. Let's go back to, you went
sure.
too fast. Let's go back. I just want to understand Centennial. What's the $150,000 that we seem to have spent this year?
So column D shows that was at the Finance Committee meeting. That would have been the dollars that we were going to, would have been the contract with Woodhouse Tanucci Architects to move forward with the planning for the facility renovation. And at that time, there's just too many unknowns, so we didn't make the decision to officially not move forward with that. We were going to give it a little time and determine what was going to happen. And so you'll see in column E here that we're saying that we're not moving forward with that this year.
Okay, I got it. Now I understand we spent it, but now we've not spent it. That's right.
So really column E is the one to really focus on here.
Got it. Okay. So
The question regarding Centennial is, what do we need? Because I know that we have applied for a grant to help pay for any renovations to the facility. What kind of material do we need in order to support that grant application?
So the grant application was submitted, so there's nothing else we need at this time. Originally, the plan was to move forward with the planning so that, because the district was going to move forward with the project, and then if we received the grant, we could continue even faster. However, once again, we've decided to put this on hold at this time. We've looked into the grant more. We've talked to the architect, and we have, if awarded the grant, we'll have a 2-year period to complete the project, which we feel would be enough time to do all the work, including the initial planning.
I thought the probability was that gymnastics was going to be relocated, not renovated.
So what this is showing, in the actual budget, there's a line item that's a combination of those two numbers, just for Centennial in 2021. So we're breaking it out here just to show what is estimated for the Centennial project renovation was the $2 million, and the remainder was that amount there. It's once again, it's sitting in the working budget right there, right now, because we didn't want to just eliminate it from the budget, because once again, if we want to renovate gymnastics, the money has to come from somewhere. So we're just showing it now. But once again, that's the discussion we're going to continue to have as we complete the planning process for capital and then bring it to the board shortly.
All right, so that's the integration of Centennial with Westridge.
Yes, yeah, that money, that's a perfect example of money that we don't necessarily see staying right there, but we didn't want to take it out. We wanted to make sure it was reflected still. And it's very possible that when we come to the board with the capital as a finance committee in September, we may have moved that to a future year. We just haven't made that decision at this point.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Moving along. Oh, let's talk about the Golf Learning Center for a second. One of the things my understanding is that the numbers have been very good there this year. And I mean, and is there any plans to do any improvements there besides just maintaining the status quo?
So if, you want to go, Jeff?
Yeah, I would say unfortunately, you can't see it on this. It was on the previous Tier 1 and Tier 2 projects. It's one of our ADA projects that we had talked about last night was moving forward with was ADA improvements to those restrooms.
Okay, but I'm talking about the facility, the golf facility, because my understanding the numbers are very good there. Is that correct, Brian?
Yeah, numbers are extremely good with the driving range, and they are also good with mini golf. But when I say good, I will say they are either on pace or a little ahead of budget. But again, budget for mini golf is not very, what I'll say,
robust.
Yeah, so the actual driving range does very well, and I think we've already made significant changes to operations to make that driving range very attractive, from the maintenance of the grass that many people choose to hit off of versus the mats, the investment in new mats. So there are no significant capital improvements other than equipment to continue maintaining that area so that it continues to look and operate to the standard that the golfers have become accustomed to, and that I think is beneficial. So there's no Tier 4 or Tier 5 improvements for the driving range at this time.
Okay.
Well, I want to pause on that because, Cal, if I could for a second. There was a comment made yesterday about the dome.
Yeah.
Could you just bring that back into this conversation for a minute, just so we understand what that was?
I can. So I've been in communications with the owner of that facility, who obviously leases the property from us. Obviously, we sublease it because we lease it from the city. At any rate, the owner of the dome has reached out to me actually a few months ago, indicating that he would like to donate the dome to the Park District. At the same time, he has expressed interest in providing a large endowment fund to be used for scholarships for employees of the Park District who are either seniors in high school or freshmen in college to support their future college payments. So this has just been conversation at this point, but I just communicated with him last week, and this is still of interest to him. We have not taken the opportunity, we really haven't had the opportunity to put together an appropriate business plan of what that would look like. Obviously, there's been other priorities of property that we already own, but we're keeping the conversation going. Our current lease goes through May of next year. So at that time, we would have to make a decision on whether we would want to accept that or put out an RFP for someone else to take over that property or lease that property. So that's the update.
Okay, well, that's helpful, and we can talk about that and get more details offline.
Yeah, okay, one more question with regard to the Golf Learning Center. It's my recollection that, and again, we went through so many different drafts with the city with regard to the leasing of Lot 3, which I believe is the Golf Learning Center property. Does the city participate in any net revenue from that facility?
They receive 50% of the net revenue from that facility, of which we have not experienced any net revenue since that lease began. So yeah, if that
Are we
answers your question.
anticipating net revenue this year from the facility?
Well, we did not budget for net revenue, and we did not project net revenue. However, considering the way things are trending at the moment, there is a possibility that we may receive some net revenue this year because things are trending very positive. Golf camps are going well. The facility is busy, and mini golf, like I said, is doing better than budgeted, but not tremendously well. So it's possible, but we have 6 more months to see what happens.
The reason I bring that up is I know one of the capital projects that we looked at, I think last night, was with regard to the parking lot at the Golf Learning Center, and that we were supposed to split that expense, my recollection is with the city. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So this may be a way for we to create maybe a bucket or a fund. If there is any net revenue due to the city, it's maybe something we can do to help offset the city's obligation to pay for that, is to use some of that money from the net revenue from the Golf Learning Center to help pay for that parking lot. It's just something to think about. Yeah.
So in our agreement on years that we expend capital revenue, our lease payment changes. So I think it changes to 25% of net revenue to help offset that capital expense that we are incurring. So it's sort of already built into our agreement that way, Cal, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But I think, let's follow up with that, and maybe we can get a little bit of an update report as to what that might look like.
Yeah, I think that, if you could start like thinking about that, because the parking lot's in disrepair, needs work. And if we can accelerate the work there, that'd be great. And if there's ways to find, to be able to finance it without having to, go into our funds or into things that we have projected for other projects, that'd be nice. But just if we could start thinking about that, that's what I'm just asking.
Well, Cal, let's follow up on that and just ask at the next Finance Committee meeting to give a little bit of a view of the numbers.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. And also, I just wanted to note that at the workshop, the first workshop in August, we plan on giving a mid-season report on golf. So we will give that to the Finance Committee first, if you would like, before that workshop meeting. That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to continue on here. Please let me know if there's any questions. All right. And lastly, you'll notice in the total for column D compared to the total for column E, there's actually a significant reduction. Column D, once again, was at the March 27th Finance Committee meeting where there was a lot of unknowns, but now that we've instituted this tier system and have a better understanding of the current conditions, there are a number of projects that we are going to be putting on hold. Any final
Questions, comments, board members, Commissioner Grossberg,
No, this is very clear. Thank you.
President Ruttenberg.
My only, yes, I do want to ask when and how are we going to approach the replacement of Westridge? Because I see we have some money spent for Westridge for next year, which, you know, I'm looking at, I'm going like, well, it's money we may and have to spend to maintain the building, but are we going to have the building for more than 2 more years? I mean, that's an issue that we've avoided because of what's happening. We can't really talk to the school district right now.
So yes, you're correct. This is certainly a priority on the staff's end right now. This has been somewhat challenging as it was in the plans to be moving forward with this planning at this time, but due to the pandemic, it has kind of made it a little more difficult. But it is something that the planning department is working on right now, kind of mapping out what the steps are for the rest of this year. You're correct. Our plan is to do, in the previous spreadsheet, the tier 1 and 2, it showed planning dollars for Westridge next year.
Yeah.
So we anticipate at this point to be expending some money, but this year it's going to be more internal, as we talked about, looking more at partnerships and things like that. But we are currently mapping out a plan and hope to come to the board somewhat soon with what that's going to look like. Brian, you have anything to add?
No, that is very accurately said. I think we had plans and we've had to readjust, but it's still on our radar, and we will give, we are discussing it, but we'll give more of an update when we're able to have. Obviously, the school and our partners are not interested right now in having this conversation. They're just other focused, and but we have to move forward in assessing this, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay, I just want to keep that at the forefront, and if there's anything we could have in an August meeting on that, just an update, I think that would be beneficial.
So in sum, it's on our radar. Correct?
Sorry?
It's on our radar, the whole Westridge.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments with regard to the capital budget review for tiers 3 through 5?
No, sir.
The only comment that I would have, and this is really going back to the updated financial forecast. I don't remember if we saw a slide with regard to the capital fund and whether, and again, updates on that based on the changes that we've made with regard to now creating these different tiers 1 through 5, and how that would impact our capital fund. I think we went over that last night, but it would also be helpful if we can incorporate that into the updated financial forecast with 1 or 2 additional slides reflecting that.
For the next board meeting, the next finance committee meeting where we go over the finances, is that?
Yes, when we do the updated financial forecast, I know we just focused on the rec fund and the general fund. I'd also like to see a slide about the capital fund also.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, nothing else on capital budget reviews for tiers 3 and 5. Going on, is there any comments from staff or are we good? Hearing none, we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is segregation of duties audit finding. This is one that we continued from the last meeting, so I believe Director Romes is to present.
Yep, I wanted to give a brief update on this, a little bit more detailed explanation, and then see if there are any questions. I know it was obviously discussed a little bit through our audit conversations, as well as I gave some information in the board packet. But employee hiring obviously is a function of our Human Resources Department. And the processing of payroll for the Park District has also traditionally always been a function of our Human Resources Department as well. There was a short period of time where payroll processing was a function of our Finance Department. However, after considerable evaluation, leadership felt that it was more appropriately suited in Human Resources, where it has been, again, for the past year and a half. This is common amongst many park districts and government agencies. Throughout the years, our park district auditors have never made a material or immaterial comment regarding concerns for payroll processing being a function of the Human Resources Department. And we've always had accountability controls in place to ensure financial integrity in our payroll operations. However, this spring, as you know, our auditor, Sikich, raised concerns and recommended that these responsibilities be segregated between HR and finance. At the time of the audit, Sikich interviewed staff, both our human resources staff and our finance staff, to understand our operations and our what's the word I'm looking for? Our operational procedures, if that's the word, as well as our internal controls. So after these conversations, it did become apparent to Sikich that so long as these controls were put into writing, which they were not in writing before, specifically citing that payroll change report is run each payroll and then reviewed by the finance department to verify any changes to payroll information have been appropriately approved. As long as that happened, Sikich really did not have any more concerns. However, of course, they did feel it was important to make the notation in their management letter. So now that these controls are documented and being implemented, of course, with the Human Resources and Finance Department, it is my opinion and staff's opinion that payroll should remain in the Human Resources Department, and I believe we will not have any management comments in the future regarding this. So at this time, I did include the new procedures in the packet, of which I highlighted the most important one, and so I'll entertain any questions if you have any regards to this.
Commissioner Grossberg.
No, as long as, they're comfortable. It seemed like that was kind of out of left field, I guess, for you guys. So as long as they feel comfortable that we put in the controls, I feel comfortable with it.
President Rundberg.
Barney, you're muted, sorry.
I realize that. I'm sorry. Has the auditor signed off on the controls?
Yeah,
All right, then we're,
Right, yeah,
yeah, he reviewed all these controls.
oh, then
Yeah.
we're fine. Then we're fine.
Okay, I have nothing else to add either, so so I'm glad we got to finally hear this issue, hear this item, so. Anything else on this segregation of duties and audit finding? Hearing none, other business, Director Peters to present.
Okay, so the only thing I have is scheduling our next Finance Committee meeting, and we would like to have it August 6th at 10 a.m., but we want to see how that looks on your calendars.
Let's see, August 6th. I'm available.
Well, you have to load the calendar, and I don't. As we're here, August calendar.
I'm fine, except I might be visiting my mother.
That's sweet.
So, but
always-
other than that, I feel
You
like
can always call in, Terry.
that's true.
Do
That's
you want
true.
to do 10 o'clock or do you want to do 9 o'clock?
I had it for 10, but we could make it 9.
I'd rather
Sounds
get it,
good.
I'd rather get
Oh.
it 9 o'clock so I can opens up my day better.
9 o'clock is better for me.
Okay.
All right, so why don't you send out a invite, if you would,
All right.
please? indicating then we'll block off that time for August 6th at 9 a.m., which will be the next meeting. Why don't we try to schedule the following meeting if possible?
Oh, okay, I actually can, we actually have an anticipated date for that.
What's that?
Hold on, let me just check that out real quick. It is, we have it down for August 20th.
Right now, I'm open.
All right, so that school will have started by then, so God willing. So, you know, my availability on weekday mornings will be extremely limited, let's just say. So, which is fine, but
Well, would you like it in the late afternoon instead, like at 3 or 4?
it would have to be, for me, 4 o'clock would be the earliest, probably.
Yeah, I'm
But
fine
so-
either. Barney?
I'm sorry.
Let's just do it at 4 o'clock then.
Yeah, Commissioner Grossberg is now a valuable member of this committee, and we appreciate his availability, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure he can participate.
Oh, thank you, Cal. That's very nice.
Okay, great.
Okay,
All right.
I move to adjourn.
wait, not yet, just
Oh.
one more thing. So I talked about the capital funding, talked about the next meeting, and then I think Barney's comment with regard to the rec center is well taken. I think we'd like to all see those numbers. I heard that Midtown has not opened yet. They've actually put off, delayed their opening again. And I know that obviously we heard what happened with Equinox. So I think it's well, I take it as an important thing to keep an eye on what's going on at the rec center to make sure that it is worthwhile continuing the operations there and just see what the numbers look like. But I think that's well taken. So we'd all like to see those numbers, and we put that on the agenda also for our August 6th Finance Committee meeting also. We could take that up.
Absolutely. And just for reference, we'll certainly continue to include the participation in my weekly update, which includes revenues, but the expense portion, we will put together that so you can see them side by side and understand how that looks.
Okay.
All right, and Brian, let me just add, it's not just, I mean, it's a total, the key in the door kind of expenses have to be included, not just staff salary.
Absolutely. We will give an overview of the indirect operational expenses that just occur as if it were open or closed, and then we'll kind of break it out into the operational expenses that are more direct to us being open, if that'll be helpful in that manner.
I will
And then
point
we'll
out,
show-
okay, sorry, Brian. I will point out, Barney, that some of the comments I've heard from the community that I've taken to heart is the lack of a facility for a lot of our disabled community members to work out. And the pool provides them that environment. And I feel really sensitive to the fact that I'd like to get that indoor pool open as soon as possible, because that is the only recreational option for some in our community. And obviously we can do it within reason, but that's something that we have not been able to meet that need and that demand. And I'm really sensitive to that.
Yeah. And we can certainly talk offline a little bit more, but through some conversations with NSSRA in general, they are also looking for program space, and we can use some of our special recreation dollars to offset some of those expenses for their needs if needed. That can be a separate conversation. If it's not being well used, we can repurpose some of those spaces to help them out. So I can follow up on that separately.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. So if no one else has any other business, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by President Ruttenberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Grossberg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. The meeting's adjourned as of 10:16 a.m. Thank you very much, everybody.
Great job,
Cal.
Cal.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Aye.
Right.